Okay, everybody, time again for another video from yours truly. This time I'm going to talk about a few things. Start first with the Zith, more specifically half-Zith. The question was asked about how they are viewed within Zith. It's hard for me to say Zith society without tongue twisting, but how they are viewed among the Zith society and how they're viewed by other humans. They kind of depends on the colony as far as half-Zith to Zith relations. The more feral colonies kind of view half-Zith as kind of outcast in a way. They are a little bit above slaves for those colonies that do keep slaves. And to those slaves, the half-Zith are seen as a little bit more important, but not quite as important as the full Zith. So they're still considered outcasts in that regard. In a place like Zith, which I'm still developing, I've got a very basic skeleton of a link map up. I'll be developing more as time goes on. But in Zith, the half-Zith are definitely more important as far as the human slaves are concerned. They are seen as slightly less important than Zith, but still significant. These half-Zith enjoy a lot of the benefits that full Zith do in regards to the slaves, which I'll get into that later on, maybe in another video or in development of Zith. But among the full Zith of Zith, the half-Zith are, as long as, how do I put this? They are regarded higher than that of the humans that serve as slaves, but still not quite equal. A half-Zith who works hard enough and displays an aptitude towards hunting can still have a pretty good status among their full Zith brethren. Of course, the half-Zith have no wings, so they can't take part in the normal hunting excursions that the Zith do on a nightly basis. But they can still engage in more human-like hunting. And because the hunt is so significant among the Zith society, regardless of the colony, they can still do pretty well. As far as Zith to humans outside of the colonies, the question in relation to that was, are they driven less by their instincts? Yes, they are driven less by their instincts. The human side definitely comes out more, and Zith will often stop and think about something before they do it, whereas a full Zith is just going to go with whatever their feelings and instincts say, no questions asked. So when it comes to outbursts and kind of the things that you would expect from a full Zith, is that they're kind of unpredictable. I mean, the full Zith can be all loving and nice one minute and just vicious and brutal the next. This thing is toned down with the half-Zith. They are able to relate more with human counterparts. The more questions were asked as far as the lone Zith, how they function in human society away from the colonies. They usually, without the elders and the whole structure of the Zith colony, they usually take on whatever kind of social norms, or at least attempt to take on the social norms that exist within the various human habitations that they're trying to become a part of. They are a very adaptable race and very curious. So be it a full Zith or a half-Zith, they're going to try to try to assimilate themselves into the larger society. For the half-Zith, it's a little easier because they look more human. The half-Zith, again, they don't have wings. They have little nubs on the back of their shoulders, kind of easily hidden by clothing. They might look a little more kind of primitive to some. Depends on who's looking at them. Sometimes they might appear a little more exotic. Other times they might appear more brutish. Not brood, but brute. Yeah, anyway, so depends on who they're associating with. And that goes mainly for the half-Zith. As far as the Zith are concerned, it's a little bit harder to really assimilate in and adapt. They can. One of the first things that they will do is, regardless of whether they're trying to become involved in a society, a non-Zith society, or if they're just out on a hunt, a lot of times the Zith will watch their prey or watch other people and kind of learn from them in the process. They like to watch. They're people watchers. They adapt rather quickly and will try to take on various mannerisms and traits of those that are watching. So, let's say a Zith is trying to become a part of Sileris, for example. If they can ever get into Sileris, which there's always ways for a Zith to get into Sileris, flying in, getting into nooks, crevices, whatever. There's always a way. You can't keep a Zith out of anything. They're like rodents in that way. But they will often take on the idea of clothing. It usually starts with the idea of folding their wings down into kind of a weird-looking cloak. Obviously, in the daytime, it's going to be pretty easy to spot a Zith doing this, but since they don't really function much in the day, it's a little easier at night. At a distance, you're not really going to be able to tell, from a good distance away at night, that a Zith is a Zith if they got their wings folded down. This whole idea may evolve into actually wearing some sort of clothing, maybe a cloak, an actual cloak, or a set of robes, loose fitting. Very uncomfortable to wear clothing for a Zith, but they can manage to do it. If they're really trying to get into a human society, they might even take on the idea of shirts or pants, maybe even sandals, boots, going a little too far. But the clothing thing will help with kind of being accepted. They'll go so far as to try to even mimic the idea of food habits, of eating. Instead of eating raw meat, they might try cooked meat. Doesn't taste quite right to them, but for the sake of trying to adapt and become more accepted, they might do this. The idea of using utensils to eat, that's kind of pushing it, but they could try. Keep in mind they're still very animalistic, so even though they do have a human part to them from generations and centuries ago, still very difficult. Let's see. What else about them? Speech. Trying to speak to a Zith and have a Zith speak back in a common kind of human tongue. A little more difficult. There are going to be a lot of growls and squeaks and kind of chirps and stuff that are kind of punctuating their speech. Voices are deep. So that can be kind of difficult. How do others, non-Zith, relate to them? How do they accept them or attempt to? How do they interact and see them? Well, let's see. I think it would be pretty common knowledge amongst most humanoids within cities and so on that Zith are a threat in groups, large groups of Zith. That's usually how they hunt. That's usually how they become a danger to the humans. A lone Zith, not really much of a danger. They're really very fragile one-on-one. I mean, they're not very strong, not very hardy physically. They are really kind of weak on a one-on-one combat. That's why they, in the hunt, and when they're actually in combat, it's usually in large groups, hit and run tactics weaken the opponent until until they're too tired or too injured to fight. And so I don't see why a lone Zith couldn't be accepted, or maybe not accepted, but allowed into a city of non-Zith. They would probably experience some amount of racism, second-class citizen kind of thing, watched heavily, maybe become a scapegoat for others who commit crimes and want to push the blame on someone else. But they could still function, albeit limited. They would still have to fight their instincts, though. Even though they're a very highly adaptable, curious lot, the lone Zith want to fit into some sort of societal structure. It's still going to be difficult for them. So you can imagine it would be like taking the whole idea of like a human child growing up in the wild and trying to re-assimilate them into human society. They're going to encounter a lot of difficulties. Posture and how they move, how they eat, speech, all that stuff they're going to find difficult and they're going to have to work on. Same goes true with the Zith. Hopefully I'm being kind of clear on this. It's getting kind of late and mine's a little fuzzy, and I've been thinking about this over and over again, trying to come up with a good way to present it. I'm probably just babbling, but we're giving it a shot. I can always focus more on more specifics if you have any questions after this. The Zith, a lone Zith isn't likely to want to stir up a lot of trouble. They're going to be kind of withdrawn, a little more held back. They're going to probably try to push back and hold down their urge to eat human flesh and so on. Not usually that difficult because there's always going to be animals for food around, fruits, and so on. What else? What other questions do we have here on them? So they're more human. Does that mean they're less driven by instincts as far as the half-Zith are concerned? I think we touched on that. They are less driven. How do other half-breeds view each other? That's going to be more on a case-by-case, individual basis. Probably be some kinship between them, knowing that they don't quite have the full status among the Zith or among the humans in the outside colonies. I can see groups of half-Zith within a Zith colony hunting together. What else? Relationship on the Zith in general, and there's been some misconception in the past about this. They aren't like these brutal slave master overlord types. They really have kind of a symbiotic relationship with the slaves, those colonies that do keep slaves, especially Zith. They're more kind of I need you, you need me kind of thing. And I'll get more into that when I work more on Zith and talk more on Zith. But yeah, let's see. That might be all I have to say about Zith. Hopefully you're able to keep up with all that. On the subject of half-breeds, there's also been questions off and on. We'll move a little bit away from the Zith and go to the Sur and the half-Sur. There have been questions about kind of abilities and what they're really capable of. A half-Zith, or half-Sur, is a bit more strong. They're stronger, healthier, a little bit more attractive and refined in appearance than a normal human. They don't have the Assyrian arm, but their arm, male or female depending on which left or right, is a colored hue resembling that of their full Assyrian parent. So, but kind of faded, so it's not they don't walk around with like a red arm. It's kind of like a sunburn, is what it would look like. They have slightly improved night vision. They can't see in total darkness, but they can see in kind of a low light situations pretty well. They have an aptitude for crafting, blacksmithing, masonry, carpentry, etc., similar to that of the full-blood Aesir. They, let's see, what else about them? Oh, yes. If they are very faithful to Azurden, very devoted to their work and to the god, and get enough marks, they could potentially gain the full Assyrian arm. Usually this happens at 3 marks when they're a full priest or priestess, but on occasion could happen when they have 2 marks. Again, it depends on the individual and how devoted they are to Azurden, to the Asur, to their heritage, and their skills in crafting. They aren't really seen as outcasts as much as long as they're able to keep up with their full-blooded Assyrian brethren. Let's see, there's that. What other questions have I had? Oh yes, a little more personal note. My G.I. Joe hobby. There's a question about how I got into the collecting, restoring. Now the restoring part, that's something that Jen kind of brought up more and focused more on. The restoring is more I get the figures that are kind of broken or faded in color or whatnot, and I just kind of piece and match different figures of the same character. Like I'll have one character, I'll have like 3 different figures, all the same figures but in different states of disrepair. I'll take them apart, combine parts to make a full figure in good condition. As far as the collecting goes, how to get into it, well, let's see, about 5 years ago, Hasbro re-released the G.I. Joe line after years of kind of moving away from what it used to be back in the early 80s in kind of an updated form. I saw these and one day when I was walking through Walmart and just happened to go through the toy section just to see, I wonder what's there. It's been a long time since I've looked through here. I wonder what they got these days. And saw those and I'm like, wow, so I picked one up and thought it was kind of cool, hung it on my wall, still in the package and everything. And not long after that I went back to where I grew up in Illinois. I live in Washington right now, and for my brother's wedding. And I put my coat up in their closet and I happened to notice a G.I. Joe package with figures in there, and I'm like, oh my gosh. And I mentioned how I was kind of interested in the G.I. Joes again, and my brother's like, well, here, you can have it. Well, my other brother also had another package similar to that. He's like, yeah, here, you can take mine too. We're not doing anything with them. I got them several years ago, and here you go. So I took them and I brought them back home, and by that time I had already collected a few of the newer figures. They call them 25th anniversary. And they really didn't look the same. It'd been a while since I'd seen the originals, the vintage ones, and when I started comparing them side by side, I really thought the vintage ones looked a hell of a lot better. So I stopped collecting the newer ones and went along with the older ones. Started off with a couple figures here and there, and now it's upwards of several hundred. And then after collecting and getting different lots of them of several different figures in various states of disrepair, I started looking at the idea of customizing. It's kind of a big hobby online. Go online, a bunch of sites involving customization, which is mainly just mix-matching parts, painting, casting your own parts, sculpting, etc. I got into that and just kind of took off from there. So as you've seen in the previous video that Jen posted, I had a lot of parts, a lot of pieces, a lot of accessories. Just kind of a side thing, painting and making my own. I do have a website that I've devoted to it. It's wizgiller.com, W-I-Z Giller.com. Go in there and see some of the stuff I've done, some of my collection, at least till I get some videos done with it. So yeah, there's that. So anyway, So if anybody has any more questions that I haven't been quite clear enough on, involving anything, but mainly in regards to this with Zith and even that, yes sir, go ahead and please ask. I'll do what I can to answer. I've kind of turned the brightness down on my screen too, so hopefully the glow on my glasses isn't as bad as it usually is. So yeah, I'm going to go ahead and end this here, and talk to y'all later. So thank you for listening, and have fun. Goodbye for now.